Good. Okay. Good morning. Siman Shin Lamed Seif Hey. Hayesheves ala mashper. If a woman is Rachmana Litzlan, she was in childbirth or Mason dies, Mevin Sakin b'Shabbos. You're allowed to bring a knife b'Shabbos afilu derech Rishus Rabbim, even to carry it through Rishus Rabbim v'keirin bitna, and you can cut open the mother, the stomach of the mother, Mutzim Avlad, to take out and try and save the life of the child. Shemi Yimotze Chaim, maybe he will be alive. Says the Ramo, nowadays we don't do this practice even during the week. We're not so clear exactly when the mother has passed away. Because we're not sure when the mother has passed away, and we've got to wait for all the simonim, by which time it's not likely at all that the child would survive. It says Nishabura, afilu derech Rishus Rabbim. So this mother is never child in childbirth. You could bring a knife derech Rishus Rabbim to save the child. It says the Mishnah Berurah, you've got Yud Zayin, the belei hava sakin ein revusa, because if the knife is with the mother, then there's no chiddush. To lekech Shabbos klal b'kriyas bet and mesa. But to cut open the mother, a dead mother, is there's no issa there. To mechatich bosa ba'almahu, you're cutting flesh. V'leka mishum chabura, and there's no real melacha of chabura. Shemi motzechai v'ashmuin, and the chiddush is shafilu sofik pikuach nefesh zeh shelo hayadayim b'cheskas chai la'ilam. You're allowed to mechal Shabbos for this child, even though there was never a cheskas chai, he was never alive. Afilu hachi doicha Shabbos. Nevertheless, you are doicha Shabbos. That's what the Gemara says. But then the Ramah adds, but nowadays we don't do this. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Shema Rak Misalfa, because maybe she's not dead. Maybe she just fainted. And if you, Rachmana Litzlan, you do something as dramatic as opening up her stomach, she may die. And if you wait until you're sure that the mother has passed away, then meanwhile, Nebuch, the child, could would have died, and therefore we don't do this nowadays. If you look at 22, in the second paragraph, he says that nowadays, nowadays we've got technology to ascertain whether the mother is still alive or not with very clear with clarity. To know also for certain if the child is alive or not. So nowadays we obviously know much more about whether the time of if the mother is alive, if the child is alive, and therefore assuming therefore we can say with certainty, and therefore we can go back to the ruling of the Shulchan Aruch and therefore save the child. Okay, says the Mechaber Seif Vav. You're allowed to make a fire for the mother for the first 30 days after childbirth, even in the heat of the summer. Can other people benefit from that fire? Take a look back in Reish Ayin Vav. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Katan Chav Medura, who adim bizmanenu lahachim atanor. Nowadays, they were back in the days of the Chavetz Chaim, whose yahrzeit is today. By the way, my Hebrew birthday as well. So to make a medura, in those days he just put on the oven. That was the way of heating up the house. So for a yoledes in the first 30 days after birth, that would be allowed. Kol shloshim im yesh lo tzad tzino, if she's cold. To Sfirelein, she's distressed by it. To Sfirelein, yesh sakona lechai kol shloshim b'tzina, because there's a sakona for a woman after 30 days to be cold. Because sakona means sakonas nefashos, and therefore, if you haven't got a non-Jewish person to put the fire on, then a Yisrael can do this for yoledes within the first 30 days of giving birth. But for other sick people, we know that you're allowed to tell a non-Jewish person to do even a deraisa for a chaylesh ein b'sakona. So if a person is cold, and this is actually quite an important halacha, that if you're heating brakes, let's say, if you're heating brakes and it's cold in the winter, then hakol chaylim etzelatzin, and you can get a non-Jewish person to put the heating on. Because of this halacha. But if there's a case of pikuach nefesh, if she says, I need this, I'm freezing cold, this yoledes who's giving birth within the last 30 days, then mutar fil de Yisrael, then even a Jewish person can do it, if there's no non-Jewish person around. Many achronim say that a chaya after day 7 din that in the Medura gamkein k'shach chodeshim b'sakona. She actually has the din of a regular chodeshim b'sakona, and therefore you can only tell a non-Jewish person to do this deraisa. A Jew doing it d'Rabbanan b'shinui would also be acceptable. Okay, Zayin. Havlad sheneilad, this child is born. You do whatever you need to help this child. Or marchitzin, you wash the baby. Or molchin, you salt him. That's what they were doing those days. For toimnin hashilya, you hide the placenta kadesh yachim havlad, that would somehow warm the vlad. For chitchin es hatabur, and you cut the umbilical cord. Says Mishnah Berurah. Let's just do the Mishnah Berurah till there. For you do whatever you need for the child, for the baby who's just been born. Hainu hodam avur lekame. For example, you wash the child. This is not the way the Mechaber brings it is not quite the order that the Shas brings. And it's derived from a pasuk. First of all, you cut the umbilical cord. Then you wash the child. For these things, you don't do deraisas. If you don't wash the baby, if you don't salt the baby as they would do in those days, then it's not a sakana for the baby, it's just tsar. And therefore, that is not enough to be doiche Shabbos. If you haven't got a knife to cut the umbilical cord, and you only can get one by doing a deraisa of doing hitzah from derech rabim, also it is also to bring the knife to do this. Just tie it with your hands. For adin, b'shar dram was karan kan, and so too the other things mentioned here in this sif. However, in the Be'alocha says the Chaim, I bring the shit of Rishonim who say that it's okay to be mechalel Shabbos with a deraisa b'shvil za'ayin shava. But certainly to do it by way of a non-Jewish person, or to warm up chamin al yodo through him, lirchetz avlad is certainly okay. Molchin, I say, what is that about? You salt the baby. Says the Mishnah Berurah Chavdalad, kadeshi iskasha abosa. It sort of hardens the skin. The child has been in utero for the last 9 months, and therefore this is back in the day, I guess. I don't think they do nowadays. That would harden the skin, and that was considered a good thing. Masham is there the malicha tiyad b'melach, that it should be, in salt. Of a perish Hamishna Rambam Kosev, and noisen olav avak hadas, not in salt, but they would put this sort of the dust or the from the myrtles from hadassim, v'adoimele, and similar. V'chein mashim be'orach erech lametvei lef, v'ayin sham. V'toim the mashilya, and then you bury the placenta. V'lo bekarka, not in the ground. Mishum zeh l'kul am mechalin shabbata. Lo mechalin shabbata. You don't do malacha of choresh or digging in order to bury the placenta. That was the minhag, that if back in the day, if it would fall on a Shabbos, i.e. the woman would give birth on Shabbos, what would they do? Ashiras tomnim oisa b'sapalim shel shemen. Wealthy people would hide the placenta in bowls of oil, or b'sifogin shel tzemer, or in cotton wool, in bundles of material or with straw. But back in the day, they would bury the placenta in the ground. Now, if you look at this, 25, very interesting. For Tam, why on earth are they burying the placenta? Says the Mishnah, says the note 25. Tam Hadav Mavu Sham, the Yerushalmi in Shabbos says, Shukadei Litin Erov and Aretz. It's to give a guarantee to the ground. Or be Urach Korban Ha'ida, the Pirushim on the Yerushalmi. Shukadei Litin Mashkein V'Simen Aretz. Sha'afa Adam La'achamosu Yashav Aleha. It's like a security, like a deposit. The rest of it will come back after 120 years. Don't worry. Interesting. Now, also, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but nowadays there's a lot of medical research about placentas. You hear stories of doing all different types of interesting, weird and wonderful things with the placentas. He says over here in the next paragraph, to use it for medical purposes, you should actually bury it. So that's what you should do nowadays with the placenta. I think that's what most people do, but there's a whole, and he carries on in that note, that to use it into other things, one shouldn't do it. Okay, this was considered a segula in those days. You cut the umbilical cords. That's actually a drabonon. Of a sefer kovitz the Rambam calls it b'shem sefer sheshanim leDavid. And just here it's okay. Okay, let's just finish off Zayin. When can you do all these things for the Vlad who was born on Shabbos? That's only when he went full term. He went Tisha, full term, 9 months, Oila Shiva, where the Chazal take on that he can live quite happily in the 7th month. But if he's born in the 8th month, which in the times of Chazal, they felt that he would not be able to live, unless he was fully formed, then you can't be Mechal Shabbos. For him, says the Mishnah Berurah, because the Chazal in those days felt that he would not live, to give him the misapkalon im haya ben kayam ma'olam, if he's going to survive or not. Le mechalin v'lo dami lahad yishev al mashba b'sifei the hosamar de kol chadosha. There we're talking about where he went full term, and therefore it was okay to help him. V'ayim behalach mashik sav nebezeh. Lamed elim kein gomru koi gam a ben shmeina kedis bebeis Yosef. Atam domrin shu ben shiva v'shtoi hu dishtoi. He's actually a 7-month-old baby who's just delayed in coming out. V'ayim behagrosh anisha b'derech b'din shulchan aruch b'tzarchiyim v'daitel in chil Shabbos leisamchin a gomru lechud. Ki im dafka k'shashan gam ken shleishim yoyin. Only if he was there for more than 30 days. The rakin tiltel atinik nuchel lismech ha-simonim de gomru lechud. We only are semech on simonim if with regard to tiltel, with regard to moving him from muktzah. Okay, beseder. Fine, we'll leave it there.